Pack your things and get out. You're fired. The words hit me like a slap across the face. My stepmother, Linda, stood behind the counter of Romano's Italian kitchen, holding a termination letter like it was a weapon. The lunch rush had just ended, and half the staff was still cleaning tables around us. She'd planned this moment perfectly. Public humiliation in front of everyone I'd worked with for the past 5 years. "Linda, can we talk about this privately?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "No, we cannot." Her painted red nails drummed against the counter. "You've been stealing from this restaurant, Marcus, from your own family's business. Your father would be ashamed." The mention of my dad sent a knife through my chest. He'd been gone for 8 months now, taken by a heart attack at only 52. This restaurant had been his life's work, and now his widow was accusing me of destroying it.
"I haven't stolen anything," I said, but my voice cracked. Around us, the staff had stopped pretending to work. They were watching, waiting. "The books don't lie." Linda's voice grew louder, more theatrical. $3,000 missing from the register over the past month. All during your shifts, all when you had access to the cash. My mind raced. $3,000? That was exactly how much Linda had been skimming from the daily deposits. I knew because I'd been watching her do it for weeks. "Sign this termination letter," she continued, sliding the paper across the counter. "Admit what you did and I won't press charges. But if you fight me on this, I'll make sure everyone in this town knows you're a thief." I looked at the letter, then at the faces watching us. Maria, our head waitress, looked confused. Tony, the cook, who'd trained me since I was 16, shook his head slightly. These people had known me since I was a kid. They'd watched me grow up in this restaurant, learning every recipe, every system, every tradition my father had built. But they also knew Linda now controlled everything. My father had married her just 2 years ago, and in his will, he'd left the restaurant to both of us, 50-50. What he hadn't known was that Linda had been planning this moment since the day we buried him. "I need a moment," I said. "You have 30 seconds. Then I'm calling the police." What she didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks, ever since I'd noticed the discrepancies in our daily deposits, ever since I'd started staying late to check the books, ever since I had installed a small recording device in the office and caught Linda on tape bragging to her sister about how she was bleeding the restaurant dry before that little brat figures it out. I pulled out my phone, pretending to check the time. Really, I was starting the recording app I had prepared for this exact situation. "Okay," I said, picking up the pen. "I'll sign." Linda's smile was triumphant. She thought she'd won. She thought she was about to own my father's restaurant completely, while I walked away with nothing but shame. I signed the letter, but as I wrote, I made one crucial addition. Right above my signature, I added, "Under duress and coercion, denying all false allegations. This termination is retaliatory for my discovery of financial theft by restaurant management." I signed it clearly, then slid it back to her. Linda barely glanced at what I had written. She was too busy savoring her victory. "Good," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Now get out, and don't come back." I stood up slowly, looking around the restaurant that had been my second home for most of my life. The red checkered tablecloths my father had chosen, the photos of Italy he'd hung on every wall, the wood-fired oven he'd saved 3 years to buy. "I understand," I said. "But Linda, I need to ask you something first, for everyone to hear." She crossed her arms. "What?" "The $3,000 you say I stole, that was all cash, right? All from the register?" "Obviously. And it happened over the past month." "Yes, we've been tracking it." "Good. Because I've been tracking something too." Before she could react, I played the recording. Linda's voice filled the restaurant, crystal clear. "I've been taking a little here, a little there, cash only, nothing they can trace. By the time that little brat figures it out, I'll have enough to sell this place and disappear." The color drained from Linda's face. Around us, the staff stood frozen, listening to her confession. She'd been caught red-handed, and she knew it. "You recorded me?" she whispered. "I recorded you stealing from my father's restaurant, the same restaurant you just fired me for the exact crime you've been committing." Maria stepped forward, her face hard with anger. "Linda, is this true?" It's not what it sounds like," Linda stammered. "It sounds like you've been stealing from us," Tony said, while blaming Marcus. I looked at Linda, seeing her confidence crumble. "The termination letter I just signed, I modified it. I stated that this firing is retaliation for my discovery of financial theft by restaurant management. That recording, along with my signed statement, is going straight to the police." Linda's face went white, then red. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can." I pulled out a folder from my back. "I've been documenting everything for weeks. Bank deposits that don't match your daily totals, security footage of you taking money from the register after hours, text messages between you and your sister about your plans." The restaurant fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Linda looked around at the staff, seeing only disgust and disappointment in their faces. "This is still my restaurant," she said weakly. "I own 50%. "Actually, you own 50% of a business you've been systematically stealing from. That's breach of fiduciary duty. My lawyer thinks that voids your ownership rights." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. She hadn't expected this. She thought she was dealing with a grieving kid who'd roll over when pushed. "You don't have a lawyer," she said. "I do now." I pulled out my phone. "I've been working with Sarah Chen from Chen & Associates for 2 weeks. She's been waiting for this moment." I dialed the number, putting it on speaker. "Sarah, how did it go?" "Exactly like we planned," I said. "She fired me publicly, accused me of theft, and I got all it on recording. Plus she confirmed the details of her own theft in front of witnesses." "Perfect. I'll file the police report within the hour." "And Marcus, based on what you've documented, I think we can get her ownership stake revoked and transferred to you." Linda grabbed for my phone, but I pulled it away. "Sarah, Linda's here. She might want to speak with you. Tell Mrs. Romano that she has the right to remain silent, and she should probably use it." I ended the call and looked at Linda. She was shaking now, realizing how completely she'd been outmaneuvered. "This isn't over," she said. "Yes, it is," I replied. "You just fired the only person who could have saved this restaurant from what you've done to it. But don't worry, I'll be back, as the sole owner." I walked toward the door, then turned back to the staff. "Don't worry about your jobs. This will all be sorted out soon, and Romano's will be back to normal. Better than normal." As I reached the door, Tony called out, "Marcus, your dad would be proud of you." I nodded, feeling tears threaten. "Thanks, Tony. I'll see you all soon." Outside, I sat in my car for a moment, hands shaking as the adrenaline hit me. For months, I'd felt helpless, watching Linda destroy everything my father had built. But today, I'd taken control back. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. "Police are on their way to the restaurant. How do you feel?" I typed back, like I just honored my father's memory. But this was just the beginning. What happened next would change everything. Not just for me, but for Linda, the restaurant, and everyone who'd witnessed what happened that day.
The police arrived at Romano's 20 minutes later. Officer Martinez, who'd been eating lunch there for years, looked genuinely sad as he walked through the door. He'd known my father well. "Marcus, I'm sorry it's come to this," he said quietly, "but we need to investigate these allegations properly." Linda had composed herself by then, putting on her best innocent act. "Officer Martinez, I'm so glad you're here. This is all a misunderstanding. Marcus is upset about his father's death and he's lashing out." "Ma'am, I need to hear the recording he mentioned." I played it again, watching Martinez's expression change as he heard Linda's confession. When it ended, he looked at her with disappointment. "Mrs. Romano, I'm going to need you to come with me for questioning." "This is entrapment," Linda protested. "He recorded me without permission." "Actually," I said, "Illinois is a one-party consent state. I can legally record any conversation I'm part of." Martinez nodded. "He's right, and ma'am, that recording is pretty clear about your intentions." As they led Linda away, she turned back to me with pure hatred in her eyes. "You think you've won? I'll fight this. I'll take everything from you. You already tried and failed. After they left, the restaurant fell into stunned silence. The staff stood around, unsure what to do. Finally, Maria spoke up. Marcus, what happens now? Are we all out of jobs? I looked around at these people who'd been like family to me. Not if I can help it. Everyone who wants to stay can stay, but I need to be honest, it's going to be rough for a while. Tony wiped his hands on his apron. Your father built this place from nothing. We're not going to let it die because of what she did. Over the next few days, the story spread through our small town like wildfire. Linda had been well liked before she married my father, but people quickly turned against her when they learned the truth. The local newspaper ran a story with the headline, "Restaurant Owner Accused of Stealing from Dead Husband's Business." Sarah worked fast. Within a week, she'd filed papers to have Linda's ownership stake revoked due to breach of fiduciary duty. The evidence was overwhelming. Not just the recording, but months of financial records showing systematic theft. Linda hired her own lawyer, but it was too late. The damage was done, and the evidence was ironclad.
While Linda sat in jail awaiting trial, I started going through the restaurant's books more carefully. What I found made my stomach turn. The theft was worse than I'd thought. Much worse. Linda hadn't just been skimming cash from the register, she'd been stealing from the supply budget, taking kickbacks from vendors, and even selling our premium ingredients to other restaurants while replacing them with cheaper alternatives. The total amount stolen was over $40,000, nearly enough to bankrupt the restaurant. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what I found in her personal files. She'd been planning this from the beginning. There were emails dating back to when she first started dating my father, discussing the restaurant's value with real estate agents. She'd married him for his money, and when he died unexpectedly, she'd accelerated her timeline. Most shocking of all was an email to her sister from 3 days before my father's heart attack. The old fool is getting suspicious about the money. I might need to speed things up. I stared at that email for a long time, wondering if Linda had done something more than just steal money. But I couldn't prove anything, and the police said there wasn't enough evidence to investigate further. Linda's trial was a public spectacle. The courtroom was packed with locals, many of whom had eaten at Romano's for decades. They watched as the prosecution played my recording and presented months of financial evidence. Linda's lawyer tried to paint her as a grieving widow who'd made some poor decisions, but the jury wasn't buying it. The evidence was too clear, too systematic. She was found guilty on multiple counts of theft and fraud. The judge sentenced her to 3 years in prison and ordered her to pay full restitution. But the real victory came when the judge ruled that Linda's ownership stake in Romano's was null and void due to her criminal actions. I now owned the restaurant completely. With Linda gone, I set about rebuilding what she'd destroyed. The first thing I did was give everyone on the staff a raise. They'd stuck by me through the worst of it, and they deserved to be rewarded. Tony became my head chef officially, something my father had always planned to do. Maria became the restaurant manager. Together, we started implementing new systems to prevent anything like this from happening again. But the most important change was emotional. The restaurant felt alive again, like it had when my father was running it. Customers started coming back, drawn by the improved food and the story of how we'd overcome Linda's betrayal. 6 months after that terrible day when Linda fired me, Romano's was more successful than it had ever been. We'd not only survived her theft, but we'd grown stronger because of it.
Linda was released after serving 18 months of her sentence. On her first day out, she showed up at Romano's during the dinner rush. She looked different, older, harder. Prison had not been kind to her. "I want to talk to you," she said, her voice barely controlled. "You're not welcome here," I replied, but I gestured for her to follow me to the back office. Once we were alone, she let her mask slip completely. "You destroyed my life. You destroyed your own life," I said, "and you tried to destroy mine and this restaurant in the process. I deserved half of this place. I was his wife. You were his wife, and you betrayed him. You stole from him, lied to him, and probably contributed to the stress that killed him. Her face went white. You can't prove that. I don't need to. You've already paid the price for what you did, and now you need to leave. She stared at me for a long moment, then laughed bitterly. You know what the funny thing is? Your father never really loved me. He was still mourning your mother. I was just a replacement. Then why did you stay? For this. She gestured around the office. For the money. For the security. I came from nothing, Marcus. This restaurant was my chance to have something. You could have had something. You could have been part of our family. You could have helped me honor my father's memory. Instead, you chose to steal from it. She looked away. I made mistakes. You made choices, and every choice has consequences. She left without another word, and I never saw her again. I heard through the grapevine that she moved to another state, got a job as a waitress somewhere. The woman who tried to steal a restaurant empire ended up serving tables for minimum wage. 2 years later, Romano's Italian Kitchen won the local business award for community excellence. As I accepted the award, I thought about my father and what he would have thought of everything that had happened. He'd always taught me that integrity was the most important ingredient in any recipe. Linda had forgotten that lesson, and it cost her everything. But more importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the people closest to you can be the ones who hurt you the most. And when that happens, you have two choices. Let them destroy what matters to you, or fight back with everything you have. I chose to fight, and in doing so, I didn't just save my father's restaurant. I became the man he'd always hoped I would be. The restaurant is thriving now, busier than ever. We've added new menu items, expanded our hours, and even started catering events around town. The staff feels like family again, the way my father always intended. And sometimes when I'm working late and the restaurant is quiet, I swear I can feel his presence. Proud of what we've built. Proud of how we survived. Proud that his legacy lives on. Linda thought she could intimidate me into giving up. She thought she could steal everything my father had worked for. But she underestimated the power of preparation, the strength of family, and the importance of standing up for what is right. She learned too late that some things are worth fighting for, and some people will fight harder than you ever imagined.